Good afternoon. Yes, my microphone is working. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, your excellencies, generals we even have in the room today. Welcome, a warm welcome to this event on reimagining European defense. And what a timely event we have today. We have something to defend in the Netherlands, probably, but we're also in the crossroads of European defense. We have a full program that I will inform you about later, but first I would like to give the floor to Klasja van der Ridder, the head of the European Commission representation in the Netherlands. I see that you don't have a microphone, so maybe we have a separate microphone for you to say a word of welcome on behalf of the European Commission. Yes, perfect.
Ik had zo vervelende vragen als mensen zeggen, hoort u mij? Maar hij doet het, ik hoor het zelf. Good afternoon, welcome, dear excellencies, dear keynote speakers, Kubilius, Chief of Defense of the Netherlands Armed Forces, Mr. Eichelsheim, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you here in Nieuwspoort in The Hague today. The impressive interest in this event, with both familiar and new faces for us, speaks volumes. It confirms the growing urgency and shared recognition of the need to address this crucial issue of European defense, an issue that affects us all and demands our collective focus. As the European Commission's representation here in the Netherlands, we are committed to bridging the gap between the work of the European Commission and Dutch citizens, institutions, companies and organizations. Our goal is not only to bring the Commission closer to you, but also to ensure that your voices are heard in Brussels as we work to strengthen the Europe that we all share. While Brussels may only be a short train ride or car ride away, our mission goes beyond proximity. We provide information and foster dialogue on the key challenges and opportunities that shape our continent. And as we all know, these opportunities and challenges are numerous today. As part of this mission, we're proud to co-organize with the Clingendael Institute this conference Reimagining European Defense here today. We're very happy with the Clingendael Institute's cooperation in the preparation and the realization of this conference. Today we gather to discuss a pressing issue that impacts us all, the pressing need for a strong European defense that is ready to face the challenges of our time. With the NATO summit just around the corner, taking place right here in The Hague, the timing of our conversation is as urgent as it is critical. The ongoing war in Ukraine and the growing hybrid threats serve as undeniable reminders of why a unified and resilient European defense is more crucial than ever. Geopolitical tensions continue to shape our world, urging us to work together and to build a Europe that is capable of defending our people, our interests, and our values. Today offers a unique chance to identify the European stage ahead of this year's NATO summit. We'll explore the latest developments, share expertise, and discuss the ways in which we can work together to enhance our defense capabilities. We'll examine the role of industry in investing in our defense strategy and consider the implications of our actions on the European dimension of defense, as well as the broader implications for Europe's collective security. And of course, we will discuss how we can work together to address the challenges that lie ahead. The ongoing conflicts, the rising tensions, and the evolving threats have made security a top priority for the European Commission. We've already made significant steps in this area. With the appointment of Commissioner Andrius Kubilius, the first ever Commissioner for Defense, we have taken a crucial step towards enhancing Europeans' defense. This marks a clear turning point in our commitment to a stronger, more resilient Europe, and we're extremely honored to welcome you here today, Commissioner. The European Commission's work in this field has already brought important results, including Readiness 2030,
an initiative that is focused on strengthening our industry, securing the necessary investments, and ensuring that Europe is ready to meet the challenges of the future. Readiness 2030 demonstrates our commitment to building a stronger, more resilient, and more united Europe. And this brings us to today. The results of our collective efforts are seen not just in strategies and initiatives, but in the active participation of citizens across Europe, who increasingly demand stronger security and defense collaboration. Just a week ago, the results of the latest Standard Europe Barometer underscored the urgency and relevance of our discussion today. A record of 81% of Europeans now support a common defense and security policy among EU member states, the highest level in over 2 decades. And this is not just a statistic. It reflects the profound shift in public sentiment, highlighting a collective desire for a unified European approach to safeguarding our shared values and interests. In a time marked by escalating geopolitical tensions and evolving security challenges, this result signals a clear mandate from citizens across the Union. It can be seen as a call to action for all of us, to collaborate, to innovate, and to fortify our collective security. Let's be here together today, not just as individuals, organizations, or institutions, but as Europeans and partners united by a common goal. A Europe that is strong, resilient, and united. A Europe that can protect its people, interests, and values. With this in mind, I invite you to delve into today's conversations, to engage fully in the conference. Let's take this opportunity to not only listen carefully to the distinguished keynote speakers, Commissioner Kubilius and the Chief of Defense of the Netherlands Armed Forces, Onno Eichelsheim, but to also share insights, forge new ideas, connect, and leave here today with a clear sense of purpose. Thank you very much for being here and enjoy the conference.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Klasja. And now it's my honor to give the floor to Monika Sie Dhina Ho, the director of the Clingendael Institute, to say a few words of welcome too.
Thank you, Louise. We're facing a perfect storm, Commissioner Kubilius said in his important recent speech, Europe without the US, is it possible? A perfect storm because the war in Ukraine is continuing, Russian aggressiveness is increasing, and a significant American withdrawal from Europe is potentially forthcoming. Moreover, as we are drawing lessons from the battle in Ukraine, we are aware that we must radically innovate and to prepare to fight and deter the wars of tomorrow. And that's why I'm delighted that the Commissioner and our Commander-in-Chief, Onno Eichelsheim, are both here today. And I'm delighted that you are all here, dear audience. Almost 250 participants, if I counted right, within a couple of weeks. And that overwhelming interest in today's topics confirms the findings of Clingendael's annual representative survey among more than 4,000 Dutch citizens that Clingendael published earlier this year. In that survey, we presented some 50 potentially threatful international developments, as well as 50 potentially hopeful international developments and policies to these respondents. And we asked them to rate the impact of all these developments on a 10-point scale and to indicate if they considered it probable that these developments would happen within 5 years. And the findings resulted in a threat hierarchy and in a hierarchy of hope, you could say. And the top 5 of the hierarchy of hope concerns hope invested in the work of Commissioner Kubilius and our Commander-in-Chief, since we see at number 1 a better protection against cyber sabotage of vital infrastructure, on 2 strengthening of the modern manufacturing industry in the Netherlands, including defense industry, 3, that the countries of the EU must invest more in the security of their region with the purpose of decreasing our military dependence of the US. 3rd, 4, a better protection against physical sabotage of vital infrastructure. And 5, a sustainable ceasefire or peace between Ukraine and Russia, not more. We do this survey every year, and what is new this year is that the Dutch audience is united in this hope. For years, we measured predominantly division in the public between nationalists who were very concerned with migration issues on the one hand, and globalists who were very concerned about climate change, rule of law, etc. on the other hand. And since this year only, we see that the Dutch public is united in its fear of cyber threats, physical sabotage, and involvement in a war because of a territorial attack on a EU or NATO ally, or even on the Netherlands itself. There is thus, cynically enough, more unity than for a very long time in the Netherlands. And the focus of the fears and hope of the Dutch audience will be discussed here today. In getting then the European security organized in times of transatlantic turbulence, we need to be aware of a fourth element of that perfect storm, though, and that happened today in the Netherlands, actually. That is that we cannot take this fragile unity for granted. With attacks on this unity from many sides, most recently even by Vice President Vance, who said that the most important threat is not Russia, is not China. The most important threat, according to Vance, comes from within. And also in our survey, we see that people with a more cosmopolitan worldview, on their part, see the nationalist movements like MAGA as the most important threat from within. And so ample opportunity to become divided. Now, democracy is about listening and leading, listening to the concerns and hopes of the people so that we can we can remain united, and leading the way in reimagining European defense. And I hope that your leadership and the public conversation today can contribute to that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Monika. Indeed, we have quite a full program today with eminent keynote speakers. So my name is Louise van Schijk. I work also at the Clingendael Institute. I'm head of unit for EU and global affairs. And when cycling here, I had just put my youngest child on the bus because he was going on camp in a group, in the eighth final year of primary school. You go on camp for a couple of days to say goodbye and have a good time. And I was thinking, well, now I'm here as a mother of two boys, actually, saying goodbye to my youngest one for 4 days. But what if you would have to send your kid off, like in Ukraine? This is definitely something we would like to avoid. And that's, I guess, also why we're here today, to really talk about this question, this fundamental question of our own defense. And yeah, we do this with the best speakers we can have. So let me introduce you one after the other and to give you the floor. And then there's also a little bit of time for Q&A. So think about the questions that you would like to ask. Andrius Kubilius, you're the European Commissioner for Defense and also for Space, also quite important for Europe's defense. And before you were an MEP, but you were also the Prime Minister of Lithuania. I think for the Dutch audience here, when he became Prime Minister in 2008, he imposed a pay cut of 45% on his own salary. So this is the person that's now responsible for our European defense. I think it's so incredibly commendable. Only last week you were in Aachen in Germany for the Charlemagne Prize Forum, and you've put forward so many fantastic ideas for European defense. So we really look forward to what you have to say today. Please, the floor is yours.
Well, I don't know if that works. Yeah. Okay. So, dear organizers, dear friends, dear colleagues, dear commander. Well, first of all, it's my pleasure to come to this very important conference. Second, as a former prime minister, I know what does it mean, governmental crisis. I think that I am not the reason for that crisis, with my visit. So I wish all the best, for Netherlands for stability, but we need to remember that democracy from authoritarian regime differs exactly that in democracies, usually periodically you are facing governmental crisis, or governmental changes. So that's what is happening here. Now, second, really, when I came here, I feeling, like back almost at home. Lithuania, if you know, small country on the Baltic Sea, and Netherlands are similar because both of us, we are two, what I call low countries. Our highest hill is 293 meters. Your highest is 322 meters. So we are lower in that championship of lowness. We are lower, And also, since it was mentioned something about cycling, I need to confess that I also like very much, cycling. And, in cycling, there is one basic rule. It's easy to go down the hill. Up the hill demands constant effort and strength and constant movement forward. If you do not move, you fall. In European defense, for quite a long period of time, we love to go down the hill. Americans did our job. It's more or less over. Now we need substantial efforts to go up the hill, and we need movement, we need progress. And we shall do it. I'm sure about that because of the great Dutchman I know in Brussels. He's, I would call, a good friend of mine, and his name is Mark Rutte. And he's doing really a great job. The Hague Summit will be a success. But more seriously, I would like to touch two basic questions about European defense. Where are we, and what do we need to do? And I really spoke some of those lines last week in Aachen, so maybe I will repeat some of those issues, but I think that we need to have some kind of broader picture in order for us to understand really both where we are and what do we need to do. So as it was mentioned before, I'm saying to myself, and I think that we can agree on that we are facing at the moment three challenges to us, to Europe. One is that the war in Ukraine will continue as long as Putin wants it to continue. Peace is not coming. And in my view, peace through some kind of those diplomacy efforts, which we can praise, will not be achieved. I will elaborate a little bit more about that topic later on. Second, Russia is becoming stronger and more aggressive. And third one, Americans are starting to withdraw from Europe. Definitely for them, China is a priority. Defense Secretary Peter Hegseth recently repeated that. And that is what we need to be ready. But this does not mean that Americans are withdrawing from NATO. And in addition to that, also when we're asking the question where we are, we need to look into the lessons, what I call lessons from Ukraine. And again, next to the militaries, I will not elaborate too much, but I recently was exactly in Kiev, on Victory Day, and the numbers are very, very clear. 80% of targets are hit by drones. And Sunday was something unbelievable what Ukrainians managed to do, attacking Russian bombers in different airports, in Siberia and so on. And that is really what we can see as big change in the whole warfare. With the drones, both Ukrainians and Russians on the front line are able to create what somebody is calling Death Valley. 15 kilometers of zone, which is nobody can move. As Ukrainians are saying, traditional tank survives 6 minutes. Ukrainians for this year are planning to produce and to use 4 million drones to defend their front line of 1,200 kilometers. So on the European continent, at this moment, we have two battle-tested armies with millions of drones. One is Ukrainian, another is Russian. Ukrainians are saying that Russians with drones are as good as Ukrainians and sometimes maybe even better. So if when we are speaking about, and our intelligence services are openly warning us and predicting that Russia can test Article 5 during next 3 or 5 years, the question is for me very clear. Are we ready to face battle-tested Russian army with millions of drones? Recently, I was in London a few weeks ago, and I met with the famous Ukrainian General Zaluzhny, who was chief of staff of Ukrainian army from the very beginning of the war till 24. Now he's ambassador in London. And he said a very simple conclusion that for time being, only China and Russia are learning from the war in Ukraine, besides Ukrainians themselves. Europeans still more are ready for the war of yesterday. Maybe a good example to follow is yesterday announcement by United Kingdom of their new defense strategy, where they put very good title for their land forces, what they expect to do, 20-40-40. 20% of targets will be hit by heavy artillery and tanks, 40% by kamikaze drones, 40% by heavy drones. New United Kingdom strategy, which we can learn from that. So that is where we are. Second question: what we need to do, what we need to prepare to do. So as I said, I use this formula perfect storm. What we are facing now. But since I was prime minister, as it was said, 2008, when we needed to cut our salaries, and it was my, I don't know, fortune or whatever, that I was 2 times prime minister on both occasions during the crisis. And I learned, very, very well this formula that, don't waste good crisis, to make the needed reforms. And so now we're facing crisis in the defense. So time really for us to act, less to complain that Americans are withdrawing and so on. Let's act, and really let's be ready to cycle up the hill. So NATO summit and European Council in June are crucial with their strategic significance because it's a good occasion for us to agree on what to do. And the good answer to, in some kind of philosophical meaning, what to do, was given in Commission President Ursula von der Leyen Aachen speech when she was awarded Charlemagne Prize last week, and she put very clearly priority on 2 most important things for European Union: an independent Europe and Pax Europea. So I will quote what Commission President have said. We cannot allow ourselves to be thrown off course by the seismic changes that we are facing. So that is a major message, and message which we can translate into very simple formulation. If we want peace in Europe, Pax Europea, we need to be ready to be independent. And definitely Pax Europea, or peace in Europe, is our strategic responsibility. Our responsibility, not American responsibility. We are grateful to Americans for their service to us till now, but we need to understand them when they ask us to take responsibility on European defense into our hands. Because Americans very much are concerned about other threats, in Indo-Pacific, in rising Chinese military power, and that is what should be the guiding principle for us. And really that is why we need to be ready to be much more independent. But as twice prime minister of a country that became independent only in 1990s, I can say a few words. Independent does not mean alone. Independent also means together. Independence means the power to shape your own future, your own destiny. And we do that together, as we know, in the European Union and NATO, and with the Netherlands and all other members, and that is what we shall continue to do. Independence in defense for European Union means that we need to be ready for equal burden sharing with our transatlantic allies in NATO. So the question is really, again, I will repeat what to do and how to build our independence in order to have Pax Europea. So I will start that question, first of all, asking myself and asking audience, what do we need to be ready for, what is coming, and what should be our agenda. In short, taking into account today's geopolitical landscape, I can summarize our future defense agenda in a very simple way. First, we need to do everything for Europe to go up with all our material institutional defense capabilities. Second, we need to do everything materially and politically, I would stress, even politically, to push down Russia's capabilities to wage new aggression. Third, we need to be ready that United States will start to move, out from Europe, what they are declaring, and that means that we need to replace their capabilities here on we need to be ready to replace their capabilities here on the European continent. And the fourth, we need to be ready to rapidly bring Ukraine with its battle-tested military forces and innovative defense industry into a new European security architecture with, with Ukraine urgently integrating into our defense structures. So we need Ukrainian integration. Not only Ukrainians need integration towards EU, but we need that integration. So this is an agenda as I see it, and this agenda, what I would like to stress, is broader than just the material side of our defense preparedness, with guns, tanks, and drones. We need to take care also about new institutional security architecture in Europe and about our geopolitical surrounding, how to make it less threatening to us. So that is, in my view, will be European defense policy, looking into the future, both into the nearest time future, but also into the longer time future. Now, I will try to run through more concrete details of this agenda. Again, those who want to read a little bit, broader, read my recent, statement in Aachen. But I will start from material preparedness. When we are talking about material preparedness, we need to have in mind several things. First of all, demand issues. Second, supply issues. Third, financial resources. And I would add, fourth, military mobility. On, demand. What we are trying to do now, we try to build the picture of what we call aggregated demand. What we as Europeans need, to have in order for us to be ready to defend ourselves and to deter. This aggregated demand will be constructed according to NATO capability targets. Militaries know very well what does it mean. Now NATO is concluding negotiations with member states on so-called capability targets. As publicly announced, NATO Supreme Allied Commander Transformation Admiral Pierre Vandier, in average, those new capability targets will be around 30% bigger than the previous targets. But as Admiral said, the previous targets are not implemented also by 30%. So simple arithmetic is saying that now 30 and 30, those who are good in mathematics can very quickly, calculate that this is around 50%, of theoretical target which we need to have. Now, really, in practice, we have only around 50%. So the difference in between what we need to have according to capability targets and what we have now is around 50%. Now, and of course, that costs money. I will not elaborate how much, but that costs money. Second is, when we are talking about material preparedness, is what I call replacement of US capabilities, because we also need to start to look into that. Well, I hope that, it will take time. It will not happen tomorrow, American, withdrawal from Europe. But what we need to have really is to have, again, rational agreement on implementation of progressive division of responsibilities with the United States. Not angry divorce, and chaotic divorce tomorrow. And this is what I would say is, in my view, the only way to keep good and rational relations with the United States on defense, is to bring to them our very clear plans, how we are going to replace their capabilities, and not to accuse them of betrayal or to complain that they are forgetting us, and so on, which sometimes is happening. Implementation definitely will take time of that, replacement. And recently there were several very important analytical papers. One was produced by International Institute of Strategic Studies, another one by European famous Bruegel. The cost to replace US resources, what now they are giving to us in Europe, means around of $1 trillion additionally during several years. And second, it's additional 300,000 military personnel which we need to have. So that is why we need really to concentrate on when we're talking about our material preparedness on, first of all, on so-called flagship projects, starting from strategic enablers, where we are heavily dependent on United States services, for example, space intelligence data, heavy cargo airlift services, and so on and so on. So those should be our priority. Now, on supply side, what we want to have when we shall have what we call aggregated demand picture, we want to have industry output plan. So how our industries can produce what we need. And besides that, to look much more deeply into what we call security of supply chains. Because definitely, I'm sometimes joking that I became during last several months expert on chemistry, nitrocellulose. That's what I learned, and where you cannot produce explosive if you do not have that chemical component, and we do not have that enough because everything again is in China, and we can talk about all of them. Components which we need to take care. Now, second, when we're talking about supply and how we can help our industries to produce what we need, definitely we need to go into quite ambitious, what we call defense simplification omnibus. We shall have it on June 17. My team is very much involved into that, because we cannot have such a situation. What we have heard from it was French industry. We had big so-called implementation dialogue with the industries, and one of the big companies, French defense companies, they said that officially in France, if you want to build a new defense factory or to expand your factory with the new facilities, it takes 5 years to have a permit. So either we shall build those factories after the war will be over with Putin aggression, or we need to ask Putin to postpone his plans, to attack us, So it's, and I would like here to use an opportunity to thank the Dutch Defense Minister for very strong initiatives on this, omnibus with his papers and letters. So that's very important. Second, definitely when we're talking about supply, again, we need, and we are planning to have later in the autumn, so-called roadmap for modernization of defense, with specific attention towards artificial intelligence and quantum. But the major message is very simple. We need to be ready for the wars of tomorrow, not for the wars of the past. And here will be very important for us also to have all the possible created platforms and cooperation things which would allow us to learn from industrial innovative success of Ukraine, which is really amazing. And again, when I was recently in Ukraine, I was told that the most active Europeans are Dutch businessmen, industrial people who are coming to Ukraine and working together with Ukrainians and inviting Ukrainians to establish here in Netherlands. I think this is a very good example. I hope that other industries from other countries will start to envy Netherlands and start to run also to Ukraine, and that is how we can push for Ukrainian integration. And the last point here is related with European Defense Industry Program, next regulation which we need to have, because what we need to have when we are talking about supply, we need to push much more for joint procurement and joint development of weapons, and that is where EDIP can be very much helpful. Now, a few words on financial resources. As you know, with the Rearm Europe program, we created possibilities for member states to use additional 800 billion euros during the next 4 years. Last week, regulation on safe loans, attractive 150 billion euros value safe loans, were supported by EU, so AAA rating, 45 years maturity. That regulation is done, so now 2 months for member states to notify us about how much of those loans they want to use, then 4 months to present clear defense investment plans. What is important that those safe loans can be used by member states together with Ukraine, procuring from Ukraine and procuring for Ukraine. And that can be really a new breakthrough in our support to Ukraine. Now also so-called national escape clause, which is allowing member states to additionally to increase their defense spending by 1.5% of their GDP, and which will not be included into deficit. That is also will be used by 16 member states. 16 member states notified us about that, so it's good. Also, we created possibilities to invest and spend cohesion funds into defense industry and military mobility. That is also important. And also what was achieved after our conversations with the European Investment Bank, they changed their mandate, and now the so-called prohibited area for EIB investment is much more narrow, and EIB can invest into dual use and also into things related with defense. So that is on financial side, but I'm always repeating that Rearm Europe program from my point of view is just the first step. We shall see what is needed looking into the future. Now on military mobility, we have 4 corridors for military mobility. Our, together with other commissioners, our evaluation recently made is showing that we have 500 so-called hotspots where infrastructure is not ready for military mobility. The cost to improve that situation is around of 70 billion euros. We need to see how we can do that. But in addition to that, also besides infrastructure, we need to go for also quite ambitious simplification in military mobility, creating so-called military Schengen, because now if you want to bring your military personnel or military goods from Netherlands to Lithuania, you will be stopped on each border, and that really you can lose quite a lot of time. In addition to that, we need to look into what we call logistics of military mobility and protection of most important infrastructure. And in the autumn, we shall come with joint communication on military mobility, which will cover those important material things in our defense. Now a little bit out from material things into institutional and geopolitical. Few words. First of all, few words about peace on European continent. As I said before, I do not see that diplomacy to end the war in Ukraine will help, because Putin does not want peace. That is what we need to understand. Second, of course, we cannot be sure how United States will behave looking into the future on Ukrainian issues, but we need to be ready that also they will perhaps diminish their role in that on that issue. So that means that peace in Europe, peace in Ukraine will become a responsibility for European Union, where we need to change our mentality. Till now, my feeling was that always we as Europeans, we're waiting for peace. That in some way that peace will come. Either Ukrainians will win the war, as we were hoping, at the very beginning. Then we were expecting that, President Biden will bring. Then for some time we were expecting that President Trump will bring. Then we were waiting also for some kind of miraculous phone calls in between of somebody and Putin, or let's say that meeting in Vatican, will help resolve that problem. So this waiting is not really bringing the outcome. So in my view, we need to change our mentality from waiting for peace into creation of peace. And here I see the only one, way is really to implement formula peace through strength. and additional strengths for Ukraine. And that strengths can come, additional strengths can come mainly only from European Union. That's my point. And I'm always asking, myself a very simple question. Why, when we're talking about our defense and what are our plans, and we know that in NATO here can be very important decisions made, when NATO member states will agree to spend on defense up to 3.5% of our GDP. But for Ukraine, annually, till now, during all 3 years of the war, we were giving each year around of 20 billion euros. The same was from American side, 20 billion euros. And 20 billion euros for us and for Americans separately means that we were giving less than 0.1% of our GDP as a military support to Ukraine. And I'm always asking, I don't understand this, military logic. When we understand that, Ukraine is defending us, and we are not really investing into our defense as we need to invest, making much stronger support to Ukraine. So here I would repeat again, safe loans, which are now the new instrument, with possibility for member states to take those loans and to spend them together with Ukraine and procuring weapons from Ukraine, in my view, can become a real breakthrough in building Ukrainian strength. Now, few words on what I call institutional side of our defense. So, when Russians are still up in, what I am using this terminology, that we need to push Russians down, but still they are up, and Americans are preparing, for withdrawal, we need to bring Ukrainians in. Because they have battle-tested strongest army in democratic Europe. On another side, we have, battle-tested Russian army. And Ukrainians also have the best innovative defense industry. And that is why, in my view, we need to start discussions about what I call new European security architecture, or true European Defense Union. That is in my mission letter also. And, European Defense Union with Ukraine and United Kingdom and Norway as part of that, Defense Union. Integration of Ukraine, in my view, is needed for European Union, and on defense side, even more than, for Ukrainian itself. And as I said, in my view, Dutch defense industry understands that very much. So, second, next point, in what we need to talk also about common European defense. I know that this is, discussion which can start now, but it can go for quite a long period of time. But I would remind that in, Treaty of European Union, Article 42, Part 2, treaty says, European Union defense policy should include progressive framing of a common Union defense policy. This will lead to common defense when Council will agree. My question is, at what time, if not now, we should start to discuss that, When we are really facing defense crisis, and when, treaty is saying that this is not only opportunity for us to create, but this is an obligation for us to frame more of common European defense policy. And that is why when I'm trying to understand, so what should we do and what does it mean European Defense Union, I would, I'm always remembering that back in 1952, our, godfathers of our European Union, Adenauer, Schuman, Monnet, and de Gasperi, were really attempting to create a European defense community. So I am not saying that let's repeat the same what they were, doing at that time, but this ambition that we need to be, much more common in our defense policy, we can borrow from that period of time. And I will not elaborate. Yeah, I think that I took too much of time, and I think that we are, one thing which I am always wondering, why we as Europeans do not have a clear strategy on Russia itself. In my view, defense as such, should be, concentrating on two issues. One is how to increase your own defense capabilities. That is what we're doing. But second is how to decrease your adversary capabilities. And definitely, having in our neighborhood post-imperial, authoritarian, aggressive Russia, it will be always a threat to us. I mean, when I am talking about strategy towards Russia, I'm asking myself why we are not trying to look into possibilities to help Russian people to transform their country back to normality. It's not for us, to do something, but Russian people can do something. And here I see always that our strategy on Ukraine, not only assisting Ukraine to defend itself, but also assisting Ukraine to create a success story through integration towards EU, through economical development, like we did, we're a success story in Lithuania, because we integrated towards EU. We were helped, This Ukrainian strategy with creation of Ukrainian success can have a major impact in, how Russian people will see their perspective. That is what we need not to forget. So that's why I'm saying that, let's also take this responsibility on the European continent. What kind of strategy we need to have, towards Russia on our own shoulders. Till now, again, we were following mainly, our transatlantic friends. When they were saying that Russia is, evil empire, we were repeating. When they were saying, let's reset, relations with Russia, we were also following that. We know where we are now, So that is, again, I would say, our big responsibility. And, what is, last point, what I see as some kind of, again, positive, positive signs of development. Usually, crisis creates the leadership. That was, after the Second World War, when we know, Adenauer, Schuman, Monet, De Gasperi, Churchill were creating, European community as a consequence of the previous war and the threat of Stalinist Soviets, influence on all the Europe. Very important role was played by Dutch politician Bayern, I learned even his name. So now we see that really this crisis is creating some kind of collective leadership of, Ursula von der Leyen, Merz, Macron, Starmer, Tusk, Meloni. And that is where really your leadership on defense and security, Dutch leadership, can play a very important role. And you are playing a very important role with, protection, Baltic waters and protecting NATO and European Union airspace. So that is what is very much appreciated. And that is why, we can build our how you call it, we can reimagine European defense only being really very much united and very much, building that unity, which we call for time being European Union, and I hope that we shall call it, for forever as European Union, and the Netherlands are at the heart of this union. Thanks a lot.
Wow. Thank you so much. So many important issues, and I'm sure that there will be many questions in the audience on the basis of this fantastic speech. Thank you so much. With that, I would like to go to the second keynote speaker, General Onno Eichelsheim, Chief of Defense of the Netherlands Armed Forces. You had a distinguished career in the Royal Netherlands Air Force. It's always very important for the military, and there are also many in the room. But also having served in Bosnia and Afghanistan, I think as many Dutch saw in the news recently, you had this task order, where really all the staff of the military were called for immediately enhance the preparedness. Basically, their boss telling them, this is really important now already, and we have to step up the game today. Yep. And I think that made a really big impact in this country. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And it's not about the color or the command where you are coming from. It's, from my perspective, about the soldiers that we are serving for. And they are serving the country and the nation and European Union. And we don't wait for peace as the Netherlands. We prepare for war. And by doing that, we make sure that we can continue in peace as the Netherlands and as European Union. And I'm, Commissioner, very glad to hear your speech and how you described what we have to do as Europe, what we have to do within all the different elements of securing our nations. And let's make clear that we have received that message well. It's not because of the Netherlands is in Ukraine to learn from Ukraine, but it's also that our Minister of Finance actually gave us the opportunity, for instance, to give bank guarantees to our industry to be able to invest in Ukrainian companies. So it's not only the military who does this, it is a whole governmental approach that make us ready for what we need to be ready for. And it's your first time in the Netherlands, as I understood, at least your first official time. And I'm a biker as well, and I'm sure that if you need to climb up mountains, you need to have a low gear, high speed in that gear. Your engine needs to be running continuously. You will get hot and warm, and the speed is perhaps not that high, but you will have at the end the top reached. And I think that's what we have to do also with Europe and within our European industry to get things going on. But I think on the other side, you have come also at the right time, because it's 80 years ago that we celebrating at this moment the peace in the Netherlands and in parts of Europe. And to be honest, the freedom that we owe to soldiers who fought for us in the Second World War. And were the Americans, were the Brits, Canadians, French, Poles, and many other nations that did this. And if these allies had not been the brothers in those periods, we would not be having the freedom as we have now. And you, as a Lithuanian, knows very well what it is to be occupied. And I know that you have said earlier that it's something that you would not want your children to experience. And I think that's a right statement. But I'm always aware of the fact that a lot of other nations did it for us, and that we have to remember that what happened then. Willing to see others, like the brothers and sisters as we see, who are worth fighting for, and our goals are worth fighting for, and our values are worth fighting for. It was for them to spend time far from home, and actually sometimes to give the biggest sacrifice. Because when we say brothers and sisters in arms, we don't just mean within our own borders. We mean that it is brothers and sisters that are coming also from outside our borders. If it's our own NCO, Robert, who did the training for Ukrainians, when he finished the training, he put a tattoo in his arm which said Brat. And Brat is in Ukrainian brother. And that means what we have to do together if we want to pass this freedom also to the future. And especially now, I think it's time that we identify that unity within Europe and unity with our own and with our partners is necessary. Because we have to show the autocratic regimes that we are together. And that's the best what we can have, is that we are together and they are quite alone in their fight what they want to do. We need a resilient society, everybody knows that. We need strong armed forces. But we also need a fast-moving European Union, and you showed some of the steps that are needed to do that. And together we must do everything in our power to make sure that our armed forces are fully equipped, with enough troops, with enough equipment, with enough material, with enough ammunition, with enough stocks. And it's our king actually recently remarked, we have to make sure that they're armed to the teeth, and that call to action is for me also important to make ourselves go faster. But in arms, and in brothers and sisters in arms, it also needs that we have to have a good functioning industry. We must bring the development processes of whatever what we need within our armed forces closer to the battlefield, like Ukrainian did, and vice versa. We have to bring the battlefield to the companies as well. We have seen those examples in Ukraine. So a couple of Dutch companies, you talked about them, went to Ukraine. And they went there actually quite quickly after the invasion of the Russians. And because of what they have learned then there, their products are now actually making sure that Ukraine is able to fight within the zone as you described, or even further if necessary, if they want to strike deeper. And the great thing about this is that our companies, and more actually on the European soil, have identified what it is necessary to go into modern warfare. So we also need to keep bringing producers closer to defense and defense closer to the war. And DevPort in the Netherlands is, for instance, a platform for cooperation between defense, research, and industry. And it plays an important role in the Netherlands to make sure that public-private partnerships are really working and that we can increase our development, what we need for modern warfare in the industry associations that are connected to DevPort. And we want our defense organization not only to be a smart buyer, but also a very, very, very smart developer. Because from my perspective, it's not about long-term contracts that tell us that I need to buy a main battle tank now and I will get provided by the industry again a main battle tank somewhere in the 2040s. It's about development of a main battle tank or any other capability that brings the same effect immediately now, that I can get within 5 years that new capability in our armed forces. If the industry can do that, then we will come up with the long-term contracts. Before that's what we have to come up with as a new thinking with our industry, that they develop their capabilities continuously, knowing what's needed at the front line. For instance, the Dutch company Delta Quad is working side by side with our armed command and control support. And Thales, actually a big company, had one army officer in its team, but finalizing their technology, they also decided to make sure that that team were reservists, and that reservists could be used within the armed forces to get the knowledge again as soon as we are going into the fight, or actually in the training in the eastern flank to see what the radars really do or can do and develop that radar instantly. We have also established CSEC together with 6 other European nations to make sure that we can develop technology immediately and implement it within our forces to make sure that we have the seabed secured within this year or within the years to come. So in a civil military setting, we can cooperate with research industry and also with the providers of that capability. And we need to take this cooperation, this interwooviness, if you can call it like that, to the next level, to the EU level. Because it's fine that we can do this with a couple of nations or in the Netherlands itself, but it will not be enough. If you look what we need in total, even if the US, or extra, if the US is leaving us with a couple of strategic enablers that we have to develop ourselves. So if we want to achieve more strategic autonomy, EU countries must buy more together, must develop more together. So what's good enough for Germany, for the UK, or for Norway, or for France is also good enough for the Netherlands and vice versa. And that sounds simple, but I've seen in the last 3 years that's not that easy. I recall, and the CHOTS, my chiefs of defense, and that's our responsibility, call already for many, many years that we only need 1 tank, 1 plane, 1 ship. And actually we even don't know, we don't use that anymore. We need more drones. And we need these type of drones that are helping us on the battlefield as the way that we want. So the CHOTS want this. So why don't we get this through our systems in developing the products that are needed to fight the war? It's my responsibility to win. It is our responsibility to make sure that I can. And that we don't lose too many soldiers at the front line as soon as the war starts. Or at least have the Russians make sure that we are capable of doing this together. And that we are interoperable all the time. And have the systems that are needed to fight the modern fight. So one of the areas where we need to act together on a bigger scale is, from my perspective, and you called it a bit, is the space domain. A domain where at this moment for the European nations, at least the Americans have the overhand. But we know that they will not continue this. So we will have to develop the space domain together. So we need our own capabilities. We need to be more strategic and autonomy on that part. And we have to work on procuring them together. Because, to be honest, none of us can build this by ourselves. None of us can afford it, and it's not necessary to afford it by ourselves. But it is a top-of-the-line deterrent capacity that you need if you want to have your sensor shooter capabilities as fast as you need it. It's seconds, not hours. It's seconds. The sensor to shooter in Ukraine and Russia is seconds. And that's what China does as well. And we are still at minutes. And that is not enough. So we need more space capability. And yes, the Netherlands is launching multiple satellites in cooperation with the Dutch industry and the international partners like Finland, Sweden, and Norway. But it's Finland, Sweden, and Norway. It's not France. It's not Germany. It's not UK. It's not Italy. So we have to combine efforts better to get that capability up and running as fast as we can. So we work with our industry partners to get that widened and to establish a strategic supply chain for those satellites, including the rocket fuel that we need, because it is not produced in Europe. It's produced in Australia, China, Russia, and in Brazil. That's too far. We need to do it here. And that's the only path you can take. But we can only reach that if we work together to get this done. So Europe must get into a position to establish a defense industry with advanced high-tech solutions and making it possible to quickly integrate that innovative equipment with solutions at the front line all the time. And when it comes to investing in that and producing at a high level, it means that we have to have ample stocks. And it needs to that we show our opponent that we have the ample stocks to do this, and that we can only not fight today, but also fight tomorrow. But like you said, there is some barbed wire between what we want to achieve and what we have at this moment and what our goals are. Barbed wire that we mostly installed ourselves. Sometimes we have a slow turning legal frameworks. Our procurement processes are not geared towards speed. And investors are letting us know that they want guarantees for the long-term commitments, as I said earlier. And we all want to change that. But it's not easy. And we can only do this from the European level starting. Of course, we need to start it up bottom-up as well, which we do as the Netherlands. But if we don't get it fixed on the European level, we don't get it fixed fast enough in the procurement that we need. And when it comes to resilience and deterrence, there are three pillars to lean on: the armed forces, us, the resilience of our population, because we cannot do it alone, and the industry that supplies us with the capabilities that we need continuously. And all, like the Commissioner said, we want to reach our capability goals. And our budgets are increasing very high. And it leads to more demand, and it leads to the industry who's picking up and is getting more capability to produce. But the supply chains, to be honest, are not expanding fast enough. And meanwhile, prices are going up, and the production lines are only getting the products within the 2030s and not in the 2020s. So we must break the cycle by scaling up industrial capacity. Everybody knows that. And by reducing the lead times and placing long-term predictable orders. But not predictable orders, like I said, in the main battle tank now, and number 50 will be coming offline in 2035. That's too late. Way too late. 28, 29, 2030, that's what we're talking about. And industry has to make that happen. They can. They really can. But we have to get that barbed wire gone. So if in our defense strategy for industry and innovation, we have said that we have to become stronger, more volume, that's clear. But we also have to become smarter. By investing heavily in cyber, in drones, and in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and space. Because for me, as a chief of defense, that's part of our main capacity for the future armed forces. It's not the conventional capabilities that we have now. We have to change this fast, way faster than probably some of us have in our heads. And we have to do this together with Europe, together with NATO. And that's my responsibility as a chief of defense. I have to get the chiefs of defense of the military committee connected and united to what path we're going to take. And we did it. We spoke last week with the military committee about what path we have to take. The 20-40-40 is not just a UK thing. It's the thing that all the chiefs of defense within NATO understand and want to achieve. But 20-40-40 really means something. It's a hugely different way of approaching war and a hugely different way of getting the material in your armed forces. If drones are one of your most important capabilities, that means something for your procedures, for your training areas, for the regulations that you have, but also for the continuously investment in the support that you need from industry. And industry needs to know directly what happens at the front line. And to be honest, conventional industry is not catching up. We do everything we do, and we will continue that, but the chiefs of defense were honest to each other, they are not going to do it. They will not be in time. We can do all the things in the world, it will not happen. Not before 2030. So what do we have to do? Look at Ukraine. Ukraine have the same problem. We didn't deliver enough for Ukraine. So what did they do? They went to drones, to space, to AI, and to other technologies to give the same effect. And the good thing is, Pierre, our SEC-T, and our capability targets that we have to reach, we don't have to have the capabilities that NATO perhaps thinks you have to buy. You don't have to buy a ship or a train or a tank. It's an effect. NATO, for the first time, has written in its capabilities that they ask an effect from us, not a specific system. So we have the capability and the opportunity to do this. So there is a path laid before us in the discussions that we had with NATO to achieve those effects together. And those are the effects that you can reach within the next 2, 3, or 5 years. And of course, we still have to scale this up within the European Union and within our European partners. And I still want to have my armed forces to have a main battle tank or to have the ships, because it cannot only be drones. I'm very much aware of that. You need to have a backstop by a main battle tank if drones fail what they have to do in the terrain that they have to conquer. So you need those elements as well. So it's okay that we have those, and we will order those, and we will talk with industry to get them faster. But we should not laugh about a China UAV with mass drones inside that can be operated for quite fast, and they have that in multiple numbers. It's not a laughing thing. It's a development that has started, and a development that we will see further along the line with more capabilities. Of course, it has its vulnerabilities, but it also has a lot of possibilities. So these examples for innovation are important to also go to our site. For instance, deep strike capabilities. We all know Tomahawks, we all know those capabilities, but we also know that deep strike UAVs are also capable of striking up deep into the territory of your opponent. So don't rely only on the Tomahawks, but also rely on other capabilities, as Ukraine shows us so promisingly. But let's be clear, the enemy wants to divide and conquer. So we have to become more unified as European nations, and not only operate and train together, but also buy and develop together. We need one European capability on all the domains for all our forces. Not 10 main battle tanks, but 1 or 2, that we can sustain, operate together, and have the same ammunition for. So, Commissioner Kubilius, like I said, Putin is dreaming of dividing Europe and turning it into Soviet 2.0. But however, if you look at the European Union, 27 nations, different cultures, different languages, but united in fending off Russian aggression, and we are loyal to each other. So I've said that when I visited the Baltic states 2 weeks ago. Your borders are our borders, and your freedom is our and my mission. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much. And I also recognize that in both speeches you already introduced these three panel topics that we will have after the break and after the Q&A. So on the European defense pillar, on these building blocks, on defense industry, innovation and finance, and also on European defense in the transatlantic context. And we have already joined several experts, defense industry representatives and politicians that will join us in these panels to talk a bit more about, let's say, the dilemmas that we're facing. Can I now ask you both to come to the stage, and then we'll see if people dare to ask questions. I already see someone on the front row. I would like to ask everybody really to ask a question, to quickly introduce yourself, and to keep it concise, because I see already there's many, and also to indicate to whom you are posing the question. Where are the microphones? I see one microphone over here, and I see one microphone over here. Okay, let's start with the two men here in front, and then we go to you, Bart. Yeah.
Thank you. Nicholas Duncan, associated with Chatham House. And my question is to you both. You mentioned resilience of the population. You mentioned public-private partnerships. How can you reimagine European defense without actually adopting a whole-of-society model, where essentially the comprehensive security model that we see in Finland and Sweden really needs to be rolled out across the entire EU?
So the true resilience building. Okay, let's take another question.
Thank you. My name is Khaled Ahmed Chaudhry from International Human Rights Commission. First of all, Mr. Commissioner, you mentioned that Russia, this continuity of the war depends on Russia. And we still remember President Zelensky saying, we will continue till our triumph. So would you like to comment on that? Besides, you said that there will be a vacuum of approximately 300 US soldiers if they leave Europe, and we can't depend on United States of America anymore, any longer.
So it's actually two questions that you're posing.
Regarding to that, I would say that conventional warfare, that is just, it's a gone era. And now it's what General Onno was saying, I mean, that latest technology, we need to develop that. So my question to both of you is, can't we think about a global alliance of the militaries, not only European alliance? Thank you.
Wow, the multilateral idea comes back. Okay, we take one question here, and then we go back to the speakers. You first, and then you for the next round. Yeah.
Yeah, many thanks to both Commissioner and the Commander for their thoughtful and inspiring speech.
Please introduce.
Oh, Carlo Trojan, I'm a former Commission official. I have a question to Commissioner Kubilius. As I understand it, the strategic objectives of the Commission are to buy more, to buy better, to buy together, and to buy European. With SAFE, you have an instrument to buy together and to buy European, but not all member states will avail themselves of SAFE. What about the situation outside SAFE? How do you ensure that member states will buy together and will buy European?
Okay, thank you. Well, here we have three very strong questions. So please, Mr. Commissioner Kubilius, I would like to give the floor to you first.
Yeah, very briefly, on the whole society approach, and you mentioned, example of Finland and Sweden. So very big influence on what we are discussing in Commission is coming from so-called President Niinistö report on preparedness of Europe. Former President of Finland presented one of those three important reports besides Draghi and Letta. And we, based on that, we made, besides white paper, we have two additional important strategies. And one is preparedness strategy, another one is internal security strategy. So on preparedness strategy, really, we see that, very important exactly direction where we need to strengthen ourselves. Because definitely, example of Finland and Sweden demands a lot of efforts in other countries. So that's my point. That we are moving that direction, but it will take time, and it will take our permanent efforts. Now, second question. Well, maybe it was not so easy to understand everything in your question, but I do not see that Putin started the war against Ukraine. Why he started, we can discuss. In my view, one of the reasons was that really Putin was, in some way, he saw the danger that Ukraine can become a successful country and can inspire Russian people, to ask for transformations in Russia itself, and that is why he decided to, destroy that chance of Ukraine back in 2022, starting the war. And definitely, he is a guy who can end the war tomorrow, if he will decide to withdraw his troops. But that is not happening, and all those efforts which still now we see as efforts to bring peace, which is very much needed for Ukraine, they are not bringing the fruit. So, as I said, another way to achieve peace in Ukraine is really to convince Putin that he will not achieve anything. And that can come only if Ukraine will be strong enough with our support. And, how to bring, global alliance of democracies, yeah, so that's, of course, big question, but let's start first of all, bringing really strong alliance here in the European Union of our military capabilities. And then, of course, we are working together with other partners. Now, there was a very important step, done a few weeks ago. We signed a partnership on defense and security with Great Britain. That is a new opening. We have similar partnerships with Japan, with South Korea, now with Canada is coming, and with India we are also working on that. So definitely partnerships are very important and crucial. Now on the question on what to do with national defense spending, that how to convince member states to spend in a more effective way with joint procurement and to spend on European production. Big issue. I see the only way really is for us on European Union level to have special legal programs, legally approved programs, like European Defense Industry Program, with financial power to incentivize member states to go for joint procurement and to go for more of European products to be procured. That was tested with previous programs, smaller ones. I don't want to go into too much of details, but we had two first tests of European level defense programs. One was called ASAP, which was is a program to support industrial expansion, especially on ammunition, when we saw that we cannot deliver to Ukraine enough of ammunition. That program was very successful. We were giving subsidies to the industries to expand. And second, so-called EDIRPA, was exactly the program to incentivize member states to go for joint procurement. That also worked very well. Now we want to build on that experience a new big program with additional legal instruments, but also with additional financial power to be effective in incentivizing member states to go for joint procurement and for European procurement, and and to spend the money, national money, in a more effective way.
All right, thank you. Please.
I will be a bit shorter, but about the resilience we got in NATO, the NATO resilience response measures, which we are building within the NATO nations, and Europe, of course, the European nations do that at this moment. And I think the example of of Norway, Finland, and Sweden is being taken over by a lot of nations at this moment. For instance, the Netherlands. So we take a lot of those elements and make them more capable within the Netherlands or within the European nations. So I see that because I'm fully aware of the fact that we need to have a resilient Europe as a total and not only a couple of nations. So I think that path is already going quite well. And the second one about Europe versus wider material. I'm a realistic person. it's okay we have to invest more on the European continent and make sure that we have European companies that can build capacities that we need in the future. But we also need to be aware of the fact that we have the transatlantic bonds necessary as well for the capability that we have at this moment. So there will be always, for me at least, they will not be separated, but they will be always integrated. A world within, I think we will have difficulties already within Europe to get our military working quite well together. So I think we have to start there before we are thinking about more broader than that. But it is a path that we have to take, that's for sure, at least on the European continent.
All right, okay. I still have two questions here, both men. Is there still a woman who wants to ask a question? Anyone?
Yes, in the back.
Yeah, in the back. Okay. Then we go the two questions here. Please keep it short. Please introduce yourself, and then we round off. Please.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Martina Prieto. I'm finishing my master's degree at Leiden University. I recently completed my internship at ESA, and 50 years on, it's been a peaceful institution, you know, only peaceful means. But earlier this year in the European Space Conference, there was discussion by DG to go into defense for ESA. How do you see it, especially considering how fragmented the European space sector is and how, for example, EU Commission doesn't really include big space agencies such as the UK and Norway? Thank you.
Thank you. And you kept it very short. And I have two questions here. Yeah, wait for the microphone. Yeah. Oh, it's coming from that side, I think. Yeah. And then also here. Oh, here, the gentleman over here. Yeah.
Good.
Behind the pillar.
Thank you. Andrius, former diplomat. Both of you talked about speed. Time is of the essence. The Commissioner also talked about slowing down Russian appetite for continuing this war. Oil is the lifeline of that appetite. You have a Baltic Sea which is capable of being closed. You cannot close it, it's not in accordance with sea law, but you can put conditions. You can put the conditions of having pilots on board who witness whatever mischief is happening. And you have, Sweden is already saying so, the condition that ships of non-bordering states, talking about non-bordering states, have sufficient insurance. How about that? The Sond is a good spot to start.
The shadow fleet, huh? That's basically the question. Okay, and then here, please keep it short and introduce yourself.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Bo Han-byun, a professor at Sogang University, Seoul, Korea. First of all, thank you very much for a wonderful overview and insightful information. My question is, two words actually came up to my mind, interdependency and urgency. And then my question is, how can you, understanding your planning and milestones, I still feel that also many audience here, I feel the same. The speed of production, speed of preparation is a bit too slow. It's a bit incremental. Have you thought about a more disruptive planning and action? Because we need something for tomorrow, not in 5 years. So for instance, if you need battle tanks, more than digitalized battle tanks, 200, 300 in 3 months or in 1 year time, how can you prepare that? Do you have any plan for that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we need a real crisis to become even quicker? Yeah.
Well, maybe I will start, very good question. I think that, while being recently in Ukraine, I understood really very much that when we're talking about innovations in defense, it's really not only the question what kind of technologies we are bringing into defense and what we see on the front line, but also how we are doing defense and how we are doing production to innovate the whole process. That's really important. Definitely, we are still not, at that process very much. We are really very seriously looking how to learn a lot from Ukraine, and not only on this technology questions, but on all the development of what I call ecosystem, how to produce much more rapidly, how to innovate much more rapidly, how to have contracts much more rapidly. Let's understand one number. In 2022, Ukrainians were able to produce with all their defense industry the weapons with a value annually of 1 billion euros, size. Now they are producing 35 billion value. So increasing 35 times. We don't need such kind of increase, but at least, to show some kind of capability to increase our production, really we need to do that, and we are looking for that, how we can do that. Now, on shadow fleet, I agree absolutely. I can, well, if I would be able to sign and then, it would be implemented, that would be really my dream becoming reality.
This is also somebody who has worked on energy security and becoming more independent from Russia for a long time before the
so
war.
we did that in Lithuania and we were very happy. But definitely I think that this topic is coming. With what was happening in the Baltic Sea, with all that cables, and so on, we had some kind of strategic paper on how to defend cables, and that again demands much more strict regulation on Russian ships or those shadow ships. So that's again, I hope will be done more and more. Now on ESA and space, as Commander said, we cannot. Imagine now defense in today without space services everywhere, starting from positioning, Earth observation, secure communications, everywhere space is playing a very important role. That is what, everybody understands. We have some very good services like Galileo, like Copernicus, but we need, and now we are building Iris Square. We need to go further. We are looking for so-called very bureaucratic title, Earth Observation Governmental Service. That's how we call it in Brussels, but this is really intelligence data from space. And also we need to look not only how we are using space for defense, but also how we are going to defend space assets. And that is what we are doing together with ESA. We have very good cooperation. And we shall continue. And sometimes I'm saying, well, I was quite newcomer into space, issues when I became commissioner. But what I saw, how much we managed to achieve as European Union, especially with Galileo, with Copernicus, which are the best systems worldwide. Yes, we are losing to Elon Musk, in launching, but we shall catch up. And for me, achievements in space was an inspiration to ask a very simple question. Why in space we're able to make European projects all together, very high quality, but it's so difficult to repeat the same in defense. So I'm still asking myself that question, and I hope that I will find an answer.
Space as the example, yeah, please.
Yeah, short on why are we not able to speed up the production and what is needed for that? I think the Commissioner already told a lot about the regulations that we have to change. We have to be aware that Ukraine or China or Russia are under way different regulations to produce and to build factories. For instance, the example of 5 years before we have built a factory. So you have to change that anyway. That will take time. And in between that, we as armed forces have to identify what do we want to have at a high-end capability and what do we actually really need also on the low-end capability, because we were used to have a lot of high-end capabilities within our forces, but you can also produce simpler products or simpler trucks or simpler artillery systems that actually show in Ukraine are very worthwhile as well. So we have to make that combination, which can be produced faster. So that's the second element, and the third is, like I said, you have to go to other capabilities like the drones to speed up that, and then as a whole, you have at least quite a formidable capability then. On the shadow fleet, what we have to do, at least within the lines where I can work, is to find the boundaries of where the regulations are and what we can really do towards the shadow fleet at the moment that they pass through the North Sea or through the Baltic Sea. And that's what we do at this moment. So learning from what Estonia, Finland or other nations are doing and make sure that we are able to react faster than we have done in the past, because it's something that I think we have to disturb quite fast to make sure that that oil is not going into Russia or the money is not going there. Yeah. So it's one of the solutions to get the economy less running in Russia. And space, I think it's clear.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. We are now rounding off this round. I wanted to mention there is still a press briefing with you for journalists. They can follow my colleague Saskia to that side of the room. For the rest, we have a break. I wanted to end with saying in defense, we always talk about capabilities. And what remarkable that we have such capable persons working in this space and help us to reimagine European defense. A really big round of applause. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
So we reconvene at 1:45, so that's in 10-15 minutes with the panels.